questions, feel free to ask us. Either you can questions for our guests. Please wait until the end of the speech because there will be activities for each guest speaker to be able to answer questions that you might have. Is that okay? Fantastic. Let me know if I'm echoing. I am echoing. All right. Next person that I'd like to invite to say, Janet Havart. She has been a heritage of women from the amazing support of President and work is done by Janet, please come and say the words if you can.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. Ladies and gentlemen, I begin the acknowledgement the traditional custodian of the land where we stand, we gather the Kulin nation, and extend my deepest respect to all Aboriginal people and Torres and Strait Islanders people, past and present. Sorry, we was in traffic, so we're rushing through. Always will be Aboriginal lands. On behalf of the Federations of Democratic Kurdish Society, Australia, and the Kurdish community, I extend a heartfelt thank for all distinguished speakers, Behruz Buchani, Niloufar Colt, Shukriya Brothers, Gino Victoria Davi, William Gadi, Vicky Santos, and John Colley and Custos Leotards. We are also sincerely grateful to Victoria University for supporting this important event. And the tireless effort of the organizing committee, Mr. Haval Haki, Jamal Smoilipo, thank you so much for that. And most of all, you are here today for person and solidarity and commitment to justice. Today, we will pause to reflect on a history, a moment that continues to echo through generation, the signing of Treaty of Lausanne on 24th July 1923, a date that is marked not just on the calendar, but the collection memory of people denied. This treaty did not just draw borders, it raised a nation. With the stroke of a pen, Kurdistan was carved into pieces and divided among Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. A homeland was fragmented. A people numbering over 40 million were rendered stateless. What followed was not just a political oversight. It was calculated separations of identity, of language, of culture, of hope. Imagine a people who are everywhere and nowhere. A people whose language was banned, whose music was silent, whose children were denied the right to learn their own history. This is not fiction. This is the Kurdish reality. Speaking Kurdish could get you in jail or worse. In Iran, execution and assassinations silenced the Kurdish leaders and terrified the communities. In Syria, over 200,000 people were stripped of citizenship, losing their right of their own to own property, work, or access to healthcare. In Iraq, chemical weapon fell from the sky in Halabja, killing over 5,000 innocent men and women and children. We are still digging up mass graves. We are still counting our dead, and we are still demanding justice. What kind of world allowed this to happen? Not once, but decades after decades. The Lausanne Treaty did not only affect the Kurds, it created a blueprint of exclusions, one flag, one language, and one identity. It offered a space to diversity, no room for coexistence. The ideology has led to war, persecution, deepening the ethnic divisions, not just in the Middle East, but anywhere that pluralism is seen as a threat. Let us be clear. This is not just a Kurdish issue, it's a universal human rights issue. When one group of culture is criminalized, we all lose. When one people are made invisible, the dignity of all people is diminished. And yet, amidst unimaginable suffering of the Kurdish people, endure. We resist not with visions, but with vision. We hold on our language, our stories, our songs. We build communities rooted in equality, ecology, and democracy, like in Rojava, Northeast Syria, where an alternative model has flourished under unimaginable pressure, a model inspired by the ideas of Mr. Abdullah Öcalan, the Kurdish leader who, despite being imprisoned on Emrali Island for over 26 years, continued to offer a peaceful and inclusive path forward. His philosophy, democratic confederalism, envisioned a society beyond the nation state, where the different ethnicity, religions, and language coexisted with mutual respect. We urge Australian and European nations, the United States political leaders, academic and human rights defenders to support the democratic solutions proposed by Mr. Öcalan and your voice matter. They can carry hope in the places where it's long been extinguished. Ladies and gentlemen, we are reflect on the legacy of the Lausanne Treaty. Let us to reflect on the resilience of the world's indigenous people here in Australia and across the globe. Both the Kurdish and Aboriginals experiences reveal that what happened when colonial power deny identity, rewrite map, and silence voices. But history does not have to be prison. It can be a teacher. Let us learn. Let us listen. Let us act. In unity, we can build a future where a cultural identity is not crime, where a language is forbidden, and where every people, no matter how stateless is, can stand with dignity. Thank you so much.
Well,
Written while he was its own intention, what that's like. Buchani's work highlighted the struggles of stateless people, the cruelty of detention systems, and the resilience of displaced communities. Through literature, film, and advocacy, he has become a powerful global voice for refugees and the Kurdish diaspora. Beres, are you with us now? Beres, can you hear me?
yes.
Wonderful. Please feel free to start.
Yeah, thank you very much for سپاس دستان خوش برای دامبازرانان کنفرانس برای جی سپاس دیرو جی درخوشی. Thank you very much for everyone for attending this conference and having me. Actually, my background, I studied geopolitics in the university, but in this speech, I'm not going to. My perspective is not on based of geopolitical or international relation concept or perspective. My approach is more cultural, and I leave it with the expert to discuss Lausanne Treaty and the legacy, and how this treaty has impacted on Kurdistan and Kurdish nation. So my approach is more cultural. So that song is quite interesting. My background is a Maori word. It said ake, 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 which means keep going, keep going. And I think that is really related to the process of decolonization in New Zealand, which is really important and is the main political argument and discourse in New Zealand. And Maori movement has achieved a lot and still is going on and is impacting on the country and the future of this country. So that is quite interesting that accidentally it was there and I sit here. It's so interesting. I think it's really important when we talk about Kurdistan in New Zealand or Australia. I think it's really important that we be able to create a link between Kurdistan movement and the movement in New Zealand and Australia to decolonize the country, which I believe that Australia is far behind of New Zealand in this conversation. But in New Zealand is different. In New Zealand, compared to Australia, I think the decolonization process is the main argument, has become the main discourse, and is a part of the daily conversation and argument in this country. And the main part of this conversation actually is written to the treaty in 1840, which there are two versions of that treaty, one in English and one in Maori language, which is the main conversation in this country because some political parties have a plan to undermine the treaty, but in other side, I think there is a huge movement in the public to actually keep the treaty and introduce the Maori version, and also in the long future to have a constitutional transform in this country to create more space to Maori people. So I think this is really important, this kind of experience, which is a collective experience to share, and we learn from these movements in Australia and in New Zealand. But regarding Kurdistan, I think it's really important that we create that link that I mentioned before, because based on my experience, the Kurdistan movement and Kurdish resistance is more known in Europe, and I think the Kurdish activist has been able to introduce Kurdish movement and nation and the culture and the resistance mostly in European countries. But in New Zealand and Australia, unfortunately, I think we haven't been able to do that yet. And this kind of conference or gathering, I think, is really important. And I appreciate the organizers and the university for creating this space. It's so important. It's because, as I mentioned before, the minorities movements or marginalized people, we have different kind of movement, and we have created our own collective culture or experience, and it's so important that we be able to share this experience and learn from each other. And I think the true activism is that how we create that link and connection between different groups and minorities to empower each other. And unfortunately, I feel and I see that there is a distance between minorities in the society. In this case, still Kurdistan is not very known, or is not being introduced to the people or academia, or in Australia and New Zealand, which I believe we should do that. And this conference, I think, is a very great example. But why should we know about Kurdistan in the context of New Zealand and Australia? I think it's really important because first of all, is a humanitarian issue, big part of it. And second is Kurdistan has a lot to offer, especially in New Zealand and Australia, that we have this decolonization argument and discourse. Kurdistan movement is a secular movement, and it's been a secular movement, which is a very unique case in a region like Middle East. And that's this secular movement has created its own political culture in a region that is full of war and conflict, and superpowers are involved. And these days we see in Syria and other countries that how actually we witness this conflict, and sometimes thousand people get killed or millions get displaced. So that's really important that we look at Kurdistan in that context, that how Kurdistan geopolitically is surrounded by 4 countries, Iran, Turkey, Iraq, and Syria, and how these countries are, of course, they have their own conflict, but when it comes to Kurdistan and Kurdish people, they are always united. And we are surrounded by these countries, and some of them are regional powers. And that is really important. And also, Kurdish nation in Middle East is quite unique. I mean, culturally and historically is very unique. We are not Turkish, we are not Turk, we are not Arab, we are not Persian, and we are just Kurdish. And that is really important that when we look at it in a large picture, we see the distinguished, because there are many Arabic countries in the region. Turks have a regional power, and Kurdish people are surrounded by these countries. And that's why I think our case internationally is not known as much as other nations like Palestine or other nations. So, I mean, there is like a unwritten agreement that they suppressed us. And that's why our voice is not here internationally. So that is really important that we look at Kurdistan and Kurdish nation in that way, and what the Kurdish political culture, what we have to offer. I think we have a lot to share. Our political culture is very secular, but in the same time is very radical. So political culture in Kurdistan is a radical political culture, and a part of this political culture is to challenge the concept of nation state. And the nation state is a concept, is a structure that everyone, all of the powers, superpowers around the world, always try to keep that structure. And Kurdish people, Kurdish nation challenge that structure, that concept. And that's why, again, there is an unwritten agreement to suppress this voice, suppress this nation. And these days we see in a country like Syria, for example, what is happening in south of Syria, which is the Druze minorities have experienced so much violence. But again, if we look at the superpowers and regional powers, at least rhetoric, political rhetoric and approach, we see that actually they don't talk about such a minority and the experience. Everyone talk about how to keep the central government stable and how to manage that and support the central government to stay stable. But no one really talk about the minority that experience the violence. And I think that is not a part of the main, minorities are not a part of the main conversation or political debate. And I think Syria is a great example that we can see how minorities are, I mean, the system that the superpowers imagine for future of Syria, we see that how they marginalize minorities and Kurdish people who've sacrificed so much over the past decades to defeat ISIS, to actually that part of Kurdistan, Rojava, we've seen that how many people in Syria, they escape, and that part of Kurdistan was like a shelter for people in Syria. But now, unfortunately, we see that is not a part of the conversation, political conversation for future of Syria. So that is a great example that we, when we look at Middle East, we see the minorities. And some people say that among Kurds that we are not a minority, we are a nation. Yes, we are a nation with at least 30 million population, but minority, I think we should understand minority relate to power structure. So it's not about population, it's not about that we are a nation, it's not about how big we are, it's about power, and it's about the structure of a nation state that it designed and established in Middle East, which we as a Kurd are always marginalized and suppressed. So it's so important that we, when we look at Kurdistan, we look at it in that way. And also, I think it's really important when we talk about what Kurdistan has to offer to New Zealand or Australia or all around the world, is about we should understand that colonialism everywhere has the same mechanism, has the same mentality, which is about mechanism of power, and that is colonialism. Same mentality, but of course the consequences is different. In some part of the world, end up in genocide. In some part of the world is different. So the consequences is different, but the mechanism is same, and that's why I think all minorities around the world are able to share their experience and learn from each other and understand each other. And when we understand each other, we are able to empower each other and actually contribute to the whole movement. So that's why I think it's really important that we look at Kurdistan in that way, and we should ask a question that what is the role of civil society? What is the role of universities, for example, to support a nation like Kurdish nation? Because as I mentioned before, the whole system is designed or established on nation state, and the governments have their own policy or rhetoric. But here in the civil society, I think still we are able to support each other, and we should ask that question: how can we support Kurdish people? How can we create space to Kurdish people as a nation that has been marginalized and suppressed for over 100 years? So that is, I think, is really important. I would like to talk about an example, just to explain what I mean by why we should understand and try to understand Kurdistan, why we should understand the minorities in Middle East, which they are not a part of the main conversation. The example that I would like to share and talk about it is the movement Woman Life Freedom, which happened in Iran 3 years ago, and it's became a trend, and it's became like an international news. And I think that example is really important, that when we look at it, how we realize that sometimes the media, universities, or cultural platforms in the West, they get allied with colonizers in Middle East because they because of lack of understanding, because there is no deep understanding of Middle East, because in this conversation in the West, they don't see minorities in Middle East as a part of the large image about Middle East. And that's why I came across, or I create this concept of double colonialism. And double colonialism, it means that minorities such as Kurdish people, in this case, Kurdish people in Middle East, we are colonized in Middle East, and sometimes we are colonized by Western platforms. And these Western platforms, it can be even humanitarian organizations, it can be media, it can be universities, because of lack of understanding. And Woman Life Freedom was a great example to explain this, that Woman Life Freedom generally is Kurdish concept and is a result of political culture in Kurdistan, and is introduced by Kurdish people, is a Kurdish perspective, and generally is a Kurdish narrative, and is a part of history of resistance in Kurdistan. And when this narrative was introduced in Kurdistan, of course, women were the main part of this movement. And I would like to refer to Shirin Alamholi, who was a Kurdish activist, and she was executed in 2011 in Tehran, in Iran, that she wrote Woman Life Freedom on her cell in, I think it was Evin prison. That shows that how this narrative has been, has a long history in Kurdistan, at least for 2 decades. And we, especially Kurdish women, have been using this narrative as a manifesto to fight, to resist. And
you've got 2 minutes to wrap up before our next speaker, just to kind of give you the timing.
Oh, sorry. So I just say, if you just give me another 2 minutes, I try to. Yeah. So that's a movement. When it started in Iran 3 years ago, that was a Kurdish woman, Jina Amini, that she visited Tehran and she was killed by the Iranian government. Then in her funeral in Kurdistan, the movement has started. And Woman Life Freedom was the main slogan in her funeral. And that has become like a manifesto for other women in Iran as well. So I mean, the Persian people and other part of Iran, they borrow this narrative and has become a manifesto for the whole movement, for all of women in Iran. And then it became a global news. But what's happened during that movement? So of course, Jina was a Kurdish. The narrative, the slogan was a Kurdish narrative and had a long history in Kurdistan. And it was introduced by Kurdish people. And also in the same time, Kurdish people in Kurdistan and other minorities in Baluchistan as well, they participated in this movement and they pay so much cost on the streets. But what's happened in the end, that I talk about double colonialism, was that the international media, universities, and generally platforms in the West, most of these platforms went for Iranian women. And the whole narrative that it was a Kurdish narrative was ignored by those Iranians, those Persian people who participated in the Western platforms. They didn't recognize it. And also most of the platform went for Persian people. And that was a very painful experience, because we Kurdish people, we felt that we are not only colonized by Persian people, we are colonized by Western media, by Western universities. And that was very painful because there was no space for Kurdish people. In Australia, ABC, Guardian, all of the media in Australia, that they gave created some space. Most of the space in Australia and just generally around the world went for Persian people. And Sydney Peace Prize, which is a very important humanitarian prize in Sydney went to a Persian woman who has no idea about Kurdistan, has no idea about history of woman life freedom, and that was very painful. I don't believe that in Australia, in a country like Australia, I believe there are many Kurdish women who are academic, who are intelligent, who are journalists, who've been writer, who've been able to share this narrative, but they were completely ignored. And this is painful. This is an example to show why we should understand Kurdistan. We should understand the Middle East, not only on based of the concept of nation state. We see the minorities as well. So that is just an example. So that's why I think it's really important that we try to look at Middle East in that way, because the Middle East is way complicated than what we think. So thank you very much. I didn't expect to talk this much, but thank you very much for having me.
Hello, Behrouz. Behrouz Tachawai. Behrouz, hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, our apology, we had some technical problem with the university, suddenly connection dropped out. So we lost a few minutes of your time. So sorry, we're just having technical person. Suddenly our Zoom entire internet connection dropped out. But we missed a couple of minutes of your time.
It's quite because I think the last 2 minutes of my talk was important for me because I talk about all of this just to make that. I hope that you hear me.
Absolutely. So would you like us in 10-15 minutes next session start another speaker, John Talley, just presenting because we lost connection. We thought we left the gap. Would you be happy we continue with you after that to recap your speech? We only lose a couple minutes, so if you like, you can summarize it after this speech.
Yeah, if it's just give me 1 minute.
Absolutely. So Behrouz, is it possible another 20-25 minutes or half an hour, because that session already started? We're trying to work it out our internet. I'm calling you from the phone. Is that okay?
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Yeah. So we establish the Zoom and then we will message you and then you join you finish your speech.
Yeah, okay.
So our apologies is beyond our control. Is the university connection. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Talk to you soon. Bye.